Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ and Jonas. You join me on a beautiful sunny day here in the south of France. I'm a couple hours outside of Marseille and I'm driving a 1971 Opel Commodore GSi. Isn't she beautiful? This car has a 2.5 liter inline 6 petrol engine, which makes a sweet 150 horsepower. But unfortunately, I'm not here to drive this car today. Nope, I'm here to drive the new Opel Insignia GSi. The new GSi is the spiritual successor to this very car. What makes the new Insignia GSi special? Well, it has a chassis tuned on the Nürburgring, has a powerful engine, and a very interesting four-wheel drive system. So, as sad as it may be, I think it's time to park this old girl and get into something new. This car goes by a lot of different names in the different markets that it's sold in. It's the Opel Insignia, it's also the Vauxhall Insignia, it's also the Buick Regal, and it's also the Holden Commodore. The GSi and the OPC are brands recognized mostly with the Opel brand, but in other markets this GSi variant will also be the VXR. Now the truth is, while the GSi is more of the performance-oriented Insignia, it's not really a bespoke hot version, so to speak, because the 4-cylinder 2-liter bi-turbo sequential turbo diesel engine with 210 horsepower or the 4-cylinder turbo petrol with 260 horsepower, the same 8-speed automatic torque converter box, albeit it's not really that tuned for performance, the 4-pot Brembo brakes, FlexRide adaptive dampers for the chassis, and the Twinster torque vectoring rear drive unit, all of them can be had as options on the regular Insignia, plus the OPC line design package. I drove this car last year in Hamburg, so if you want to get a comparison, you can check out that video as well. But what is so special about the GSi then, if all the stuff is already available in a regular Insignia? The GSi is a package, so to speak, which puts together all of the great hardware, a bespoke body kit, bespoke seats and wheels as well, and most importantly, it's been tuned to be a more performance-oriented car, and it's been tested and developed at the Nürburgring. One of the things that makes the GSi unique, and one of the special details that you get only with this variant, are the front bumpers. This intake cosmetic element on the sides, as well as the lower angular bumper, is something that only comes with the GSi. Actually, the regular GSi, these elements are in shiny chrome finish, but this is the exclusive line, which is another a variant or package on top of the GSi, which you can put to get some special colors like this very matte gray color, and it also turns these elements like these cosmetic intakes and the window frame from chrome to glossy black. And finally, now this is something that might be a little bit silly, but the Insignia, the new one, always reminded me of Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. I mean, this face with the eyes kind of reminds me of that character. But anyway, speaking of the eyes, the GSi comes with a lot of equipment as standard, like I was just saying, including the IntelliLux Matrix LED lights. The Opel Insignia is 4.89 meters long, it's about 2 meters wide, and actually weighs a hefty 1,700 kilograms. Now, a lot of the standard features of the GSi can be had as options on the standard Insignia, like I was saying, but things that you do not get are, for example, these bespoke 20-inch wheels, which look really beautiful, and also the Pilot Sport 4S Michelin tires, which are also specifically designed for this car. These rims also showcase the beautiful 4-piston Brembo brake calipers down there. Towards the side, we have glossy black casing for the outside rear view mirror, a glossy black frame for the window line, again specifically for this exclusive trim. The lower part of the car is has a very sporty side skirt down here. The roofline slopes downwards. This is more of a fastback than a sedan, and I'll show you that later on because this opens up as a fastback as well with the window. And finally, to make this car even more sporty and agile, the car has been lowered by 10 millimeters. Here at the back, the fastback roof slopes downwards to a very cool looking spoiler. They claim that the spoiler does help in producing more downforce. Well, I'm not so sure about that. It doesn't seem to be large enough to be making quite a big difference. And anyway, this car is already quite heavy. I don't think you need more downforce. The tail lamps are quite subtle. They look fairly good, but nothing too extravagant, I would say. Towards the middle, a very clean hatch. There are no latches and no visible cameras. They're all behind here. This is the button that you press on the logo to release the hatch. The GSi badge, which denotes that, hey, this is a special insignia. And down here, part of the GSi package again, the bumper is more aggressive, more sporty. And down here with the glossy black bumper, we have two cosmetic exhaust bezels, but there is actual exhaust tips in the middle. Here we have the key fob for the Insignia GSi. We have the keyless entry, so you can put the key away in your pocket. Press this button once to unlock, press it again to lock the car. The door opens fairly wide. It's a fairly long door. Has a nice heft to it. Actually, it's pretty heavy. The materials up here are okay. They're pretty soft. They're not very plush. You have the standard carbon fiber effect plastics here, which all companies use to evoke that sporty personality in a car. Hard plastics here, unfortunately, and plush materials down here. More hard plastics over here. Window and mirror controls. And something which I always like about Insignias is this little scooped out contour over here, because you see the air vent actually juts out of the car at this point, and it kind of, you know, fits in very nicely here. So it's something new. I like this little bit of extra detailing. Down here you see the GSi stamped logo, and this is the AGR approved sport seats, which are bespoke to the GSi. If you look at it really quickly, your first impression should be that, hey, wait a minute, that looks familiar. And it is, because this has been designed to look like a king cobra. So you can see the head of the snake, you know, it's taut and it's ready to strike. And well, I know that a lot of car companies always go to the animal kingdom for inspiration, and you can see the snake right here. Now this seat is not only very cool looking, I guess, but it's also very functional. As you can see, you have massaging, you have air chambers for the side bolstering, air chambers for the position and amount of lumbar support, memory, automatic base and reclining, under thigh support. It's also heated and ventilated. Really great, but unfortunately, it's all in leather. And I say unfortunate because I think it would have been easier and nicer to have just Alcantara and fabric, and you can do that little bit extra to, you know, help the animals, and it would be cheaper. But the GSi, I checked a couple times because I wanted to be sure, only comes with leather options. This is the basic leather option. You can also get 2 upgraded leather seats as well. Anyway, let's hop inside and take a closer look. The GSi also gets a unique sport steering wheel and aluminum pedals. The steering wheel has a nice grip to it, a perforated texture in the middle, nice contours for your put your thumbs, paddle shifters for the 8-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, buttons over here for your adaptive cruise control to set that, is a steering wheel heater button over there, voice command telephony, and towards this side we have buttons to go up and down through your favorites. This is to navigate through the dashboard, which I'll show you in a minute, and volume control. The instrument cluster is pretty unique because you have these two analog dials for your tachometer and some temperature and the fuel gauge, but the screen in the middle as well as these crescents on either side are part of the screen. This is a very useful screen. You have multiple different views and options. For example, you can have it in your trip mode for your trip meters, speed, fuel range, tire pressures, and traffic sign memory, all of these kinds of information over here, as well as you can go back and get information on your audio, your phone, navigation. And in the navigation, not only can you just get your exit instructions, but also a mini map, which is really useful if you want to have, somebody's operating the touchscreen for music and stuff. You still have you have a small little map there as well. But apart from that, some more settings. I think it's a very useful system. You also have a very useful heads-up display, which gives you your speed, navigation, exit commands, traffic sign that has been recorded, other useful information. You can change the settings and making it up and down, brighter or dimmer, and you can toggle between different kinds of options. The screen is not that big actually, but I think it does the job well. It's angled a little bit towards the driver, so it's easier to see, and it's a nice screen which is not that glossy, so it doesn't leave too many fingerprints. You have a lot of your regular options for your audio, phone. Also, you can get phone projection with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. This car also comes equipped with a SIM card, so you can have Wi-Fi on the go. Navigation, like I told you guys, you get the map over here, and on your instrument cluster, and of course on the heads-up display. Settings for your car, different kinds of things. Sport mode customization, so you have different ways to modify the sport steering, the suspension with the flex ride, adaptive cruise control, and of course the twin star all-wheel drive system. You can also operate some of the climate mode over there. So the driving mode, you have three modes: sport, tour, and normal. So pretty self-explanatory. The sport mode is more aggressive and taut and harder. The normal mode is in the middle, and touring is more comfortable. We'll check these out later when I'm driving. Apart from that, you also have the OnStar service. You also have cameras for front and rear. Another unique feature for the GSi is the competition mode. To get to the competition mode, you press the traction control button twice. Once to turn off the traction control. The second time you press it, you get a symbol on your dashboard which says competition mode activated. We have a dual zone climate control up front, knobs to determine the temperature that you want. The seats, like I said, have heating as well as ventilation, and your other regular climate control buttons over here. A cubby hole with some beverage holders to keep some water bottles. And over here we have the driving mode selector. So you have, when none of these buttons are engaged, they're just in normal mode, but when you press tour, then the light turns on to tell you that you're in the tour mode, and now you're in normal again, and then now you're in sport mode. Very simple choice, not too many complicated variants. There's only 3 options. Lane keeping assist button over here, auto engine shut off, and this is for the automatic park assist, so it'll help you park, and the parking sensors. This is the gear lever for the GSi with the 8-speed torque converter, very standard. Of course, from drive you can flick it to the left and then use the lever to go up and down, or you can use the paddle shifters. Electronic parking brake, and another little cubby hole down here. We have a plush armrest which you can lift to get more storage area down here, a place to slip your phone in, and a USB charger. As with Opels, you also have the OnStar button over here. You can press this and you will reach a call center. You can ask for some information, and of course an SOS button to request immediate assistance and help. All right, let's take a seat in the back. The door opens fairly wide, but the fastback roofline means that you have to watch out for your head. Also, the wheel arch kind of does impede a little bit into your entry area, but the door is okay. Materials here are just about passing off for soft touch. They're fairly hard. More of that carbon fiber effect. Plastic over here, hard, 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 but a plush armrest. So watch your head as you slip inside. And well, actually, it's not that bad. I mean, expected that this is not going to be as roomy as the Estate. If you want more headroom, then you should check out the Sports Tourer, which obviously has the Combi or the Estate body type. I can slide my feet barely under the front seat. Again, this is the sporty variant, and these are the sport seats. So you're gonna be having the seats fairly low down all the time, which means there isn't all that room for you to slide your feet under it. But on the good side, there's decent leg room. I am 5'8" or 1.7 meters. The seat is set to my driving position. So for me, sitting behind myself, it's not a problem. Headroom, if I sit up straight, is about that much. So not that bad for somebody of my size. On the plus side, we have air conditioning vents in the middle, seat heaters for the outside two seats, a couple USB ports, ISOFIX points for child seats, and I really like these kinds of covers which don't come out but instead just hinge down, so you don't lose these little covers. That's always good. A central armrest with cup holders, but I don't like these kinds of armrests which don't have like a little tab or a hoop for me to pull this down with. I'm stuck with trying to jam my fingers inside and then pulling them down. I think they should just have like a little hoop for that. While we're at it, let's check the middle seat. It's okay. It's not significantly raised. The cushion is a little bit hard. The rear, the reclining, I mean the backrest is also a little bit more stiff because of that plastic cup holders. We obviously have the central transmission tunnel, so you're going to have to share your foot space in the footwells with your co-passengers. But on the whole, definitely comfortable enough for 4 people. 5 adults will be at a pinch, but it's better than I expected. Let's take a look in the trunk. So this is the fastback, which means we have a hatch instead of a boot lid. The opening is very large. You can see that you can easily load a lot of items. You have a partial shelf, or a tray rather, which you can detach quite easily if you so wish. Well, quite easily. I might have to take that back. It's a little bit trickier, but there you go. And then now you have a lot more room, as you guys can see. If this is not enough for you, you can also look into the Sports Tourer, which you can also have in the GSi trim. In that, you have 560 liters of boot space, and with the seats down, it goes to 1,665 liters. It's enough for everybody, I think. On the other side, you also have electronically folding rear seats, which fold in a 40-20-40, but with these two switches, it goes in a 40-60 fashion. Let's take a look inside under here. So yeah, there is no spare wheel, but you have a tire repair kit. I guess that's good enough. Well, we have a little surprise for you guys, so make sure you stick around till the end of the video. There's a little bonus review for you guys, so don't go anywhere. Let's check under the hood. Whew, it's really windy today. Hope the hood doesn't go flying off, but we have pneumatic struts to keep it up automatically. So, like I said, the GSi pretty much comes with the top options in the regular Insignia range. So that includes the engines. It has the 2 big powerful engines, 1 diesel and 1 petrol. The petrol is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine, which makes 260 horsepower. And the one we have here is the 2-liter diesel engine, which has a 2-stage serial sequential turbo, so they call it a bi-turbo. This makes 210 horsepower, but it has a lot of torque. It makes about 480 Newton meters, very low down in the rev range. These Engines are mated to the 8-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, which in the GSi has been tuned to give more sharper responses and is more performance oriented. That, coupled with the adaptive flex ride dampers in the chassis, which again has been tuned and developed at the Nürburgring to be a lot more sharper and more focused and give more agile handling. And finally, the Twinster all-wheel drive system, which again you can get with the regular Insignia, but in the GSi it has been tuned to give more dynamic handling. So, what is the Twinster? Well, this is the part that I like. I love these technical details. And the Twinster is a very interesting solution to make a front engine, transverse mounted, front wheel drive engine layout into a 4-wheel drive conversion on demand. Now, we're not strangers to these kind of systems. I keep talking about the Borg-Warner Haldex system, which Volkswagen uses pretty much across all of its range, especially in the VW, the Seat and the Skoda brands. We talked about that especially in the Karoq review that we did last week. Check out that video if you want to know a little bit about how that works. But the Twinster is developed by a different company called GKN, and it uses 2 clutches instead of 1 to provide a on-demand all-wheel drive system with torque vectoring. How does that work? Well, the Haldex system that I keep talking about, you know, from the transaxle, there's a propeller shaft which comes to the rear axle, and there is the unit, the Haldex control unit, which has an electronic clutch. One electronic clutch which engages and disengages depending on the software to connect the rear axles to the drive, and hence it becomes all-wheel drive. But the Haldex system is an open differential in the back to provide torque vectoring or as well as stability control. It just uses the brakes. The hydraulic modulator pulses on the different individual brakes to keep them in line or to vector the torque that way. But this kind of torque vectoring system, as you can imagine, depletes the brakes a lot more quicker. They wear away. And in fact, you're slowing down the car to achieve a torque vectoring effect. But the Twinster, which this car has, tucked away behind there, unfortunately, we don't have a cutout to show you. We did have a cutout to show you in the Hamburg review of the launch of the Insignia, so you can maybe go back to that video and see how it looks. But basically, imagine with me, from the front transaxle, there's a shaft that comes to the Twinster unit. The input shaft is fixed, but after the differential, the pinion gear, there are 2 clutch packs, one on the left and one on the right. Now, when these clutch packs are disengaged, it's just a front wheel drive car like the regular Insignia. The front axle never gets decoupled. But when these 2 clutches engage, depending on the amount of engagement and slippage, the torque is also coming to the rear axles. And because there are 2 clutches, if one clutch is more engaged, then the torque is diverted more towards that wheel. And if this one is more engaged, it goes towards this wheel. So you can vector the torque automatically, and these calculations are made in milliseconds, so it's always adjusting. But the party trick for the Twinster is it can overspeed one wheel. So actually the gear ratio of the drive shaft from the front transaxle is stepped up. So there's a step up gear ratio coming to the rear axle. So in fact, if both the clutches on the Twinster are engaged and the car is tracking in the straight line, which means the 4 wheels are tracing the same path, then the truth is the rear wheels are actually spinning faster than the front wheels. Now you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to have wheels spinning at different speeds? Well, in a straight line, you're right. It doesn't work that way, and it doesn't use it. But when you're going around a corner, let's say you're going around a right-hand corner. Now this is especially useful to get a yaw moment. A yaw moment for us laymen is what we call rotation of the car. So when you're turning right, the front axle, being a front wheel drive car, can tend to understeer, especially when you're going really quickly. The inside wheels get lighter because you're leaning over to the outside wheels. So what the Twinster does is it sends more torque to the outside wheel, outside rear wheel, so in this case the outside left wheel, and that's spinning a lot more faster than it would require in a naturally open differential situation. So because of that, the rear of the car tries to overtake the front of the car, and you get a nice yaw moment, or this rotation. Other companies also use the Twinster. For example, the Range Rover Evoque uses this to achieve a much better on-demand all-wheel drive performance in off-road conditions. And the Ford Focus RS uses this for its famed drift mode, which is exactly like I said. It locks the 2 clutches, so the differential is effectively locked. And because it's overspeeding the front wheels, you get a drift. albeit it's not really a natural drift. It's a very unnatural four-wheel drift with a lot of understeer in it. But hey, it's a different way, it's a different technique, and let's see how different it makes the car feel. Let's take a drive in the new Opel Insignia GSi. We're going to focus on trying to understand how dynamic the car is and what it has become thanks to all the tuning on the Nürburgring, thanks to all this great hardware that it has. For example, the 4-piston Brembo brakes, the FlexRide adaptive dampers, which are tuned again to be more reactive and adaptive and faster and quicker, as well as things like the Twinster rear drive unit, which is supposed to give you good torque vectoring, and of course the lowered suspension, all of this. So to do that, we're going to quickly make our way out of this very beautiful little French village here in the south near Marseille, and we're going to try to find some twisty, winding roads. While we're doing that, I can already tell you all the stuff that I need to do to set up this car. It's all of one action. I just have to press this little button over here which says Sport. Now immediately I feel the car becoming a lot more tense, it's becoming a lot more taut, it's a little bit frantic in the sense that the suspension is also, the dampers are very rigid, so on these village streets it's a bit jiggly, wiggly, but I mean, you don't buy an Insignia GSi hoping to have the most plush, pliant, comfortable ride now, do you? No. The throttle response is also a lot more sharper. It reacts a lot better, although honestly I'm not a big fan of this 2-liter diesel engine. I really think for the GSi you should go ahead and just get the 2-liter petrol engine, the turbo petrol, because I think that definitely makes a big difference, and that's the kind of character that you want when you're driving your Insignia GSi. Apart from that, we also have the steering, which is now a lot sharper than the regular Insignia, so this reacts really quickly. As you can see, you can really slalom, and the size is a little bit larger than I would have liked, but the grip is really good. The rack is really precise. It's a quick rack compared to the regular Insignia Insignia, so it gives you a good agile feeling. In the sport mode, it also becomes a lot more heavier, so it gives you pretty decent feedback. And finally, the 8-speed automatic transmission also is tuned for better responses in the throttle, so it aids in that by shifting up a lot later in the rev range and keeping the engine in that nice meaty torque band. All that being said, I am out of the village, I am in some twisty roads, it looks beautiful, so let's kick down, push forward. Another thing which you'll immediately notice when you have it in sports mode like this right now is the sound. This is a diesel engine, but it actually sounds pretty good on the inside. How is this possible? That's because they pipe in the sound of the induction of the engine into the speakers in the car. Now this might be a little bit of cheating, but to me it doesn't really matter, because the truth is I want to hear the engine, and if I'm driving a car, I don't want to hear the engine when it's not in sport mode, right? So how can you achieve physically, acoustically, a car which is quiet when you want it to be and loud when you want it to be? Well, a lot of cars have adaptive valves in the exhaust, but the easy way to do it is just pipe in the engine sound to the speakers. When I turn it back into, say, comfort or tour, or rather normal or tour, now you can't hear the engine at all, because it's not piping anything in. So I don't mind. It's a little bit gimmicky, but it gets the job done, and in that sense, you know, I think it's okay. And again, for a diesel engine, it's quite remarkable that it's got this deep burbly sound, you know, almost kind of like a little pseudo V8, because of course it's a turbo 4, but it's got that burbling sound, and you can hear the turbo a little bit, and it's actually pretty fun. The stiffer suspension kind of does make the ride a little bit jiggly on these bad surfaces, but that's mostly due to this bad surface here. The Brembo brakes are also really nice. And when you're taking a corner at a slightly larger speed than you think you should, that's when you really notice the twinster torque differential really helping out. Like right now, you know, pushing through the corner when you accelerate at the apex, you feel that rear of the car swinging out a little bit, and it's really exciting. It's a different sensation. It's very subtle for somebody who's not really used to these kind of cars or these kind of systems, or don't really understand the differences. You probably won't notice it at all. And while the Twinster can be programmed to be more tail happy, like in the Focus RS and with its drift mode, in the Insignia GSi, it's tuned to be more to aid in giving more torque. Oh wow, looks like we are stuck behind an American classic car convoy. I see some Mustangs, Firebird, but I mean, look at this corner grip is phenomenal, and you can really push through the corner like that, and it's not understeering at all because of that torque vectoring yaw moment as it swings around. I'm kind of distracted by all these cars. I mean, my petrol head is like looking at, what are these cars? What are these cars? There's a Mustang Fastback. There's a, oh man, what is that? That's a Camaro. There's a Camaro. Very nice. But the truth is, I don't want to be stuck behind them, so I'm going to slow down a little bit, give them some space, and then I can show you some acceleration tests. So what was I saying? Yeah, this torque vectoring differential, it does have a pronounced effect in this car, and that is to aid in the grip. It's not going to really kick out the tail or anything like that, but when you want to have some more fun like that, you do have something called as the competition mode or the competitive mode. Like I said earlier, if you press this once, the traction control is off, and then if you press it twice, it says ESC competitive mode. Now, I don't want to try this on public roads. It's really beautiful, and of course there's going to be a lot of bicyclists here as well, so I'll leave the traction control on. We're going to go to the Michelin test track in a little bit. We're going to drive up there now, actually, and once we're there, we will try to demonstrate the differences this will make, and again try to demonstrate to you how that torque vectoring differential can really give you that yaw moment. Anyway, all that said, I have put some space between me and those American classic cars. I'm going to come to a standstill. There's a curving road up ahead, as you guys can see. I'm going to do, auto shut off. I'm going to do a 0 to, let's say, 70. I think that's a safe number for me to accelerate to without being reckless. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Take some time for the turbos to spool up. There's a sudden surge. I'm at 60 already, 70, 80, 90, so 100, there we go. So wow, I said 70, but by the time I've reached the end of this corner, I was already doing 100. Now this car weighs 1,700 kilograms, but I'll be honest with you, while I'm not so happy with the engine, and we can also test out the gearbox, but I can already tell you that it's a bit hit and miss. It's a torque converter, and at 210 horsepower, you can easily go for a dual clutch. I mean, you don't need to have a torque converter in case, if you have a lot of torque, it's better to have a torque converter instead of a dual clutch. But at 210 horsepower, it's hardly putting strain on that. But apart from that, the chassis is fantastic. It really masks the weight of 1,700 kilograms. You don't feel it at all. And when you're pushing it hard like this, the steering is so nimble, it's so reactive, it really follows the undulations on the road, so you get a good sense of what's happening. The Michelin tires for this car are also very good and communicative. And those adaptive dampers, that Flex Ride, which has been developed on the Nürburgring and tuned for this car, also does a phenomenal job keeping the car flat at any speed around any corner, especially on these rough roads here in the south of France. I mean, look at this. I'm going back and forth at 100 kilometers per hour, very flat. And I've already caught up to the convoy of the American cars. So yeah, I mean, I was just complaining a little bit about the engine, and I was complaining a little bit about the gearbox. But apart from that, even though the shifts, you have the pedals on the steering wheel, the paddles rather, to shift up and down. There is no top end in this engine, unfortunately. There is really no top end. Again, it's a diesel turbo, so 3,500 to 4,000 RPM is the top, and there is no power up there at all. So I think to really make the most of this really good chassis, and fine, you don't really want a double dual clutch gearbox, you're okay with the torque converter, then I think you should go for the petrol engine. And one last thing before we change over to the next part of the driving, let me just take a look at what is the mileage we're getting. Oh, it says 12.3 liters for 100 kilometers. We've just started off. I reset the trip meter just a few kilometers ago. I think I'm gonna go right, so maybe I can do a little bit more driving without being disrupted by the classic American cars. But the claimed efficiency of this engine is around 7.1. Oh, you can hear that sound now. It sounds so good. I mean, it's a diesel, and it's got that nice yaw moment. Yeah, 7.5 liters for 100 kilometers. I don't think you're gonna achieve that if you're driving like this. Yesterday when I was driving this car around here, I did see numbers around 9.1, which for a diesel, I don't think is that good. So, you know, why spend money on the diesel engine when if you want something economical, it's not really serving that purpose. If you want something fun, it's also really not serving that purpose either. I mean, a petrol engine will be more sprightly. So, yeah, I think that's enough for the dynamic driving part. Let's go to the test track. Now we're going to take the red Insignia GSi with the petrol engine, the 2-liter turbocharged engine with 260 horsepower. And we're going to take it out on the test track here in the Michelin testing circuit. We're going to do a couple high-speed laps and then do some driving on the wet track. So let's put it in sport mode. Already this engine feels and sounds so much better than the diesel engine. Coming to a slalom section, I'm going to take this at around, let's say, 70. As you can see, the body is really well controlled. The steering, like in the diesel engine Insignia, is very, very precise. Great grip on cornering. Now we are on a banked circuit. Take this at a very not so fast. I'm going about 120. The tires are making no noise, absolutely. Very capable. These tires are also specially developed here on this circuit for this car. Steering, again, is giving me really good feedback. And another thing about feedback, is the seat and how important seats are. Like, for example, now I'm going through this high-speed chicane at around 100. The brakes are really good. Dives in really nicely. I can feel how much of grip and the rotation of the car through the seat. A sports seat is something you sit in. You don't sit on a sports seat, you sit in it. It should be encompassing you, it should surround you. And these seats really do that because you have a lot of adjustments for side bolstering, underthigh support, lumbar support, all of these different things. But at the same time, it's lightweight, it's low down, it's really connected to the car. Like how the tires are important to connect the car to the road, the seat is very important to connect the car to you. I think it does that really well. Let's take another round on the high-speed circuit. Here we're going to do another slalom at 80. So let's bring it down to speed. Very capable. The tires are really very grippy. The track is also really dry. The brakes, again, are also very good. This engine, again, I cannot stress enough, sounds so much nicer, feels so much more sprightly than the diesel engine. Wow, really good lateral grip. And you can really feel the rotation that I keep speaking about with the the Twinster back onto the banked section of the circuit at around 120. Really good feedback again from the wheels, the steering wheel. So I think, you know, the GSi, it does a lot of things really well. It does it. But the diesel engine, I don't think is a good match for the personality of this car and the capability of the chassis. And the gearbox, well, I'm not really doing circuit driving, but let's try putting it in manual. Actually, no, let's leave it in automatic. It's always the best way to understand how well the gearbox works, by leaving it in automatic. But I'm really surprised and quite impressed with its body control. In the sport mode, the FlexRide chassis really helps dive in. So if you don't want to spend an excessive amount of money on having a fun sports car, and you don't want the standard VW Golf R or something like that, you want to try something different, the Insignia GSi definitely has, you know, a different outlook thanks to its unique all-wheel drive system. Now, with that being said, let us transfer from the high-speed oval over into the wet track. Now, this will give us an idea of how the four-wheel drive system really works. We can also put it into the competition mode, where the traction control is also very much limited. And with that, we can also understand better how this works. Now, on the road, we saw that it doesn't really understeer at all. It's very composed. But how is it going to behave out on the wet? I can already tell you, you know, you think you know a car and then it spins. So to set it up for this, first let's try one lap with just the traction control off. So this means that the wheels will be allowed to slip a little bit, depending on the power, but the stability control will make sure that if I'm oversteering or understeering, or, you know, I'm about to tailspin and spin out, it will break the individual wheels and bring me back in line. It'll snap me back in line. I can demonstrate that to you. So now we'll keep it in sport mode. Traction control is off. This section of the tarmac is very slippery, as you guys can see. It's struggling for traction, but thanks to the ESC, it's getting it under control fairly quickly. And you can feel the rotation like that, and you can easily use the traction control system, and rather the ESC system, to help you. You can lean on this system because it takes care of bringing you back in line. You don't have to worry about counter steering too much. But lots of traction on the wet as well, and not just the wet. This kind of surfacing on this track is very, very slippery. It's designed to test the limits of a tire, and this really gives us a good idea of how well this tire works even in the wet. There is a little bit of understeer. Now, you cannot negate that no matter what, you know, trickery and torque vectoring you use. You cannot tie a leash to a tree and then expect it to come to you when you call it. You know, it's still a front wheel drive car, and it's still going to understeer no matter what you do to it, because this Twinster system, while it can vector torque in the rear, there is no way to decouple the front axle. So as you can see, understeer, a little bit of oversteer, that's as much as we get. Now let's try to put it into the competition mode. Yeah, let's put it into competition mode. For that, we come back to the regular traction control mode. On, press it twice. Now it says ESC competitive mode. Now the car is really under my control and my skill, which I don't know if I trust myself. Already, if I'm really gentle on the throttle, no problem. If I'm really pushing it, it's only when you take it to the limit that you feel the understeer. But I think for a common man, for the common driving situation, having an understeery car is always really safe, because that means that even in an emergency situation, the car is still in a safer setup, because if you're understeering, you're not losing as much control as you would if you were oversteering. So yeah, it's really gets a bit leery without the traction control, and it's really just understeering now. Yeah. So the natural setup of the car, despite the torque vectoring twinster, is still very much towards understeer. That might be a bit disappointing to hear, but like I said, out in the real world, you know, you're not going to be driving in competition mode on a wet Michelin test track and then complaining about understeer. You really wouldn't. So since that's the case, does it really matter? No. I think I'm gonna leave it with traction control off and have some more fun. So there you guys have it, the Insignia GSi on the test track. It's definitely got a nice setup thanks to the twinster system. It's got some tricks up its sleeve with terms of torque vectoring, and you can also have a little bit of fun with it. Let's take a drive with the Insignia GSi on the highway and see how it behaves in this environment. Because let's keep in mind, the suspension is quite low and firm. The wheels are really large. So does that spoil the comfort? Well, in one word, no. In two words, it depends. Because in the tour mode, which I have right now, the dampers are even more supple, so it's a lot more compliant. And you don't really feel that the suspension is stiff. Actually, the surfacing of this highway that we're on right now is really nice, so it doesn't make a problem at all. But I can hear quite a lot of road noise, and it's not too bad. But if I have to be critical, I would say that the road noise is a little bit on the higher side, and I think that's also because perhaps the wheels are really big and there's not much rubber to absorb all of the vibrations. But anyway, apart from that, in the tour mode, the throttle response is also fairly leisurely, more dull, so you don't have abrupt accelerations and braking. The steering wheel is also fairly light, and overall it's more relaxed, it's more touring. The gearbox also shifts up very quickly and just keeps it in 8th gear as much as possible to improve efficiency. This car also has a bunch of different assistance systems. You have blind spot monitoring, front assist, parking assist, you have cross traffic alert, you have lane keeping, you have cruise control, all of the stuff. So let's try out some of these systems. I have the lane keeping assist on. I have a little symbol of that on my heads-up display as well. Using the buttons on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, I can set the cruise control to, let's say, 110 kilometers per hour, and it maintains a distance, safe distance with the car in front, and maintains the same speed. I can adjust the gap I want with this button on the steering wheel, and that also gives me a display on the heads-up display. The steering intervention is actually really mild. As you can see, I'm trying to demonstrate in a very safe way. It's not as pronounced as some other systems, like for example in the Volvo that I drove recently, or even some of the Volkswagen cars, or even the BMW cars. So in that sense, it's more of a mild suggestion that, hey, I think you're kind of going off the lane. Hey, it's not really like, no, which for example the Volvo car does. It just pulls you in and it locks the steering wheel. It's like, no, it's mine, I'm under control now. But in this case, it's a lot more very, very gentle intervention, which is okay. I think people get a bit complacent when you have all of these incredibly complex assistance systems like lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control. It makes a lot of people think that, hey, you know what, I cannot pay as much as attention as I should be on the road. But one thing that I have noticed driving this car for the past couple of days in terms of the adaptive cruise control is that it's not that good at recognizing cars coming in front of you. It doesn't really, the sensors, the range doesn't really span out towards the edges as much as I would have liked. So you have to still be attentive and make sure that if there's a car coming across in front, that you're aware of that. But anyway, apart from this, the assistance systems, the visibility is also pretty good out the back, even though we have a Sportback roofline. There is no rear windshield wiper, interestingly, and yesterday was really bad. It was raining a lot over here, and that did prove to be at least a mild hindrance. And I think I have to take the exit over here, so there we go. But brake feel is also really good. It's very confidence inspiring, especially because of the, you know that, hey, I have a 4-piston Brembo disc caliper. And unfortunately, I haven't been driving on the highway too far to give you a conclusive number on the mileage. Right now, it's still saying 10.3, but I can tell you that it's easy to accomplish somewhere around 9. I think that's a very realistic number if you were driving enthusiastically in the twisty roads and also driving on the highway for majority of the time. I think around 9 is okay, but the claimed efficiency of 7 I think is a bit too optimistic. Maybe there's another chance for us to try this out later on, but I would say that this diesel engine is perhaps the weak point of an otherwise fairly successful package. It's not that fun when you're driving. It has no top end, and it sounds good with the pumped audio track, but apart from that, I don't think it's that efficient. It's not that smooth, but apart from that, I think it's a really good car overall. Apart from the road noise, also the wind insulation is top notch, very comfortable. The seats, the sport seats, even though they're very designed to be a sporty seat and hold you really tight, if you loosen everything up and remove the side bolstering, remove the under thigh support or the lumbar support, everything, it's a lot more cozy and comfy. And let's not forget, I also have a seat massager, so if I turn it on like right now, it makes those long distances and long journeys on the highway that much more comfortable. Now let's check how it is to sit in the back of the Opel Insignia, and for that, let's hand it over to Jonas.
Yeah, sitting in the back. First of all, I got 1.93 m, and I can show you, I still got a really decent kind of space. It's like 5 centimeters left, and also my feet are, it's quite comfortable for the space. I can show you here, we got seat heaters for both seats, but just on and off, no different modes. Those 2 USB charging slots. And what I notice is if you're sitting straight, as you can see now, you got kind of a nice view, because the seat in front of you is really narrow in the front. So usually I like to do it like this, and to see the front and to see what's going on. But in this car, you're sitting here and you can kind of see the left and the right. I can show you like this. Yeah, headroom, that's more like a problem. I got like, if I'm really sitting straight, I'm already hitting the roof. If I sit a little bit more comfortable, more laid back, then my hair is kind of touching the roof. And headspace, it's a little bit small. But overall, I would expect less space in such a car.
Let's summarize today's drive of the Insignia GSi. The starting price for the GSi variant is around 46,000 euros, which is a little bit too much considering the fact that the entry-level Insignia with the base trim starts at around 26,000 euros. And there are some other competitors like the Golf R, which has 310 horsepower, that's compared to 260 here in the GSi petrol, which you can actually have for a few thousand euros less. But what the GSi does offer you is a chassis tuned for performance on the Nürburgring, the twin-stir rear drive unit, which gives you that fun extra experience of having that yaw moment, as well as a good interior, good fit and finish, good seats, and of course the added practicality of the fastback or even the sports tourer combi. Overall, I think if you're ready to forego that little bit extra price premium that you are paying for the GSi, it's a good package. I would definitely recommend you guys check it out. Be sure to subscribe, hit that button down below, give us a like, let me know what you think. And finally, we have a special little surprise for you guys. We have a fun bonus review coming up right now, so don't go anywhere. We here in Autogefühl, we're always asked to review more electric cars. And we usually do. We've done a lot of the Teslas, the Smart Electric 4.2, the Ampera. But what if you can't afford these cars? What about this? The front design of this golf cart is pretty simple, you know. You have some headlights which sometimes fall off, you have to be careful. A bumper because when you inevitably crash the golf cart. And well, that's about it. Cockpit overview. We have a switch to turn on your headlights, although in this one only one works. A meter to show how much battery you have left, and a key to turn it on. Down here, some cup holders, or perhaps a way for you to store your golf balls, and lots of storage, lots of cubby holes. But the best part is getting in. It's so easy because there are no doors and you have a lot of headroom, a lot of knee room, big tall windshield, although there's no wiper, so you kind of have to peer out from the side. All right, let's take it for a spin. The Easy Go golf cart. Instant torque from the electric motors. It's quite rattly and loud on the inside. Top speed limited to 84 kilometers per hour, or maybe is it 8.4 kilometers per hour? It's kind of loud in here because there's a lot of wind noise, but steering angle is great. You can really reverse the car in a really tight spot. Sometimes it doesn't back up when you want it to. You have to wiggle the key a little bit. There we go. No, I can do it. There we go. So this car also has some personality. Oh yeah, a little bit of oversteer. Steering is very, very, very vague. Am I turning right? I think so. The suspension is actually not bad. We're driving on some gravel, so it's handling it pretty well. I am very comfortable. Let's check braking. Hold on to your camera, Jonas. Oh yeah. But how's the back seat?
The back seat is quite comfortable. It's kind of weird to drive like in the wrong direction, but I got a lot of space, you know. I can switch from the left to the right, and then I also got like a bar for my feet, so quite a nice experience.
If you're one of those people who up till now haven't really bought into the electric car phenomenon, well, you don't have to try a Tesla to see what it's all about. Just get yourself one of these golf carts and take it for a spin. You'll have a blast. Thanks for watching.